The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting NORML.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to think and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon and welcome to the weekend. It is Friday, August 13th, 2010, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us for the next 2 hours of news, talk, interviews, information, music, comedy, and more by, for, and about the cannabis community. Our first hour is the NORML Daily Audio Stash podcast, available on iTunes, and our second hour is live Toker Talk Radio with live call-ins from you via Skype or your regular old telephone if you're 20th century like that. And we'll get to that in our second hour, 2 o'clock Pacific time. Also joining us in the studio, the lover of all things meteor shower, our own pirate, Ganja John.
Yeah, the Pirates in a little bit of a haze from last night. Like I was saying, I'm in a little bit of a haze from the meteor shower last night.
Ganja John was up watching the meteor shower, so he's up late. So everybody go easy on old Ganja John today.
Yeah, I might make some mistakes, but they're not going to dock my pay today.
That's right. We're not going to dock your pay. Also joining us from the virtual studio in Astoria, Oregon, at the mouth of the Columbia River, the beautiful Pacific Ocean, Cannabis Carey.
Oh, do we not have cannabis?
Oh, my goodness. We dropped Carrie somehow. We'll have to get her back on the line here.
This is not Ganja John's fault.
That's not Ganja John's fault. Mute that Skype line. I'll redial her here. Coming up on today's show, got all sorts of interesting stuff for you, including some reefer madness today. The California Chamber of Commerce has released some scary predictions about what will happen if when California passes Prop 19 this November. It's going to be the attack of the stoned workers. So we'll talk all about that in Reefer Madness at 45 past. At half past, we're going to talk to Dave Bienenstock, the senior editor of High Times magazine, to get the High Times issue preview. The October 2010 issue is on newsstands this weekend, and he's got all of it coming up for us. The High Times Cannabis Cup preview, Rollin' a Blunt with Snoop Dogg, and the top 20 pot colleges. So we'll learn all about that at half past the hour. At 20 past, we have our Daily Toker Tunes. Today, a replay from Eric Smokesbud, Marijuana by Skyhouse, and we'll also see if we can get Carrie on the line to do our hemp headlines here in just a couple of minutes. So
sounds like we got her.
We got Carrie back. Are you there?
I'm sort of here.
You're sort of here. Glad to hear you. What's coming up in the news today?
Well, we're going to look over. We knew it was just a matter of time, but absolutely, the Colorado dispensary industry regulation bill that went through is getting its first court challenge. We're going to take a look at some Republican senator candidates. I'll say spewing trash about federal stimulus money. And we might have time to talk a little bit about California Proposition 19. I think it's a big story today.
Oh, yeah, really huge story. So we'll get to that right after our first break here. Also want to encourage you, if you'd like to advertise with NORML Show Live and the NORML Daily Audio Stash, please send me an email, stash@norml.org. I'm getting all sorts of calls from people. And we will be broadcasting live from the Oregon NORML meeting tomorrow and from Seattle Hemp Fest next weekend. More details on that coming up here on NORML Show Live. Stick around.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
76% of Americans no longer support arresting and jailing marijuana smokers, and nearly as many support the medical patients having access to medical marijuana. And over 80% of our citizens now believe the war on drugs is an ineffective failure. So the question is, when will the government's misguided war on adult marijuana smokers finally end? When? Simple. When you and your like-minded friends, family, and coworkers get involved with an organization such as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. My name is Keith Stropp, and I founded the organization in 1970. Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's up-to-date webpage at www.normal.org.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML, invites you to our 39th Annual National Conference, Legalization, Just Say Now, Thursday, September 9th through Saturday, September 11th, 2010, at the opulent Governor's Hotel in downtown Portland.
The war on drugs has been a failed, and I think that we need to decriminalize marijuana laws.
Extend your visit through Sunday, September 12th, and you can also attend the 3-2-day Portland Hempstock, the largest outdoor cannabis and music festival in Oregon.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Just Say Now. The NORML National Conference, September 9th through 11th in Portland, Oregon. Details available on the web at normal.org/conference or by calling 202-483-5500.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
The controversial House Bill 1284, the bill that regulates Colorado's dispensary industry, had a provision that allowed municipalities to ban dispensaries. Some cities in Colorado have done just that. For example, Aurora and Broomfield, Colorado are two cities where there is a ban on dispensaries, and there are others considering such a ban. Many activists have speculated that the ban...
Oh my goodness, we've lost Carrie on the Skype connection. Maybe something's happening on her end. So sorry to hear about that, Carrie. We'll try and get you back here. I'm going to mute that Skype line and we'll redial the call. Make sure that we can connect her. I think we're having some connection problems up in Astoria, Oregon today, which is kind of surprising because it's a beautiful day. We're not having bad weather or anything, so we shall see how that turns out. Might be a problem with Carrie's computer. Oh boy, we're doing it live. This is all sorts of fun.
We're really doing it live today.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th. We can't help this, guys.
Yes, we can. But also want to point out that today is Semi-Casual Friday, and so we're wearing the Seattle Hemp Fest 2008 shirt. This is from my friends in Los Marihuanos. They gave this to me back in 2008. So.
And Scott Gordon from Herb Age Designs, if you're listening, we need some more shirts for Casual Friday.
I think we've got some coming, actually.
Yeah, the new camo line came out.
Yeah, the new camouflage line, herbagedesigns.com. Good friend of the show, good friend of NORML, also a member of the Oregon NORML Board of Directors, so always a good guy. We will be at the Oregon NORML Cardholders Meeting tomorrow, which is the first one to take place at the new world-famous Cannabis Cafe, 322 Southeast 82nd Avenue. It's just literally 6 blocks away here from Rolla J Studios, NORML Show Live. So we'll be out there broadcasting live, streaming live, I should say, at live.normal.org. Check the stream about 11 a.m. Pacific time. We'll run it through 2 or 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, remote from the meeting. We're really excited because this is the first meeting that we've had that has allowed where the problem with the occupancy has been taken care of. When we first got in there for the grand opening of the Cannabis Cafe, there was a problem with the occupancy because of the back stairway not being finished. That's been taken care of, and now the occupancy has been increased from 49 to... Well, I'm not going to say the actual total number because it sounds really huge, but let's just say there's going to be a whole bunch of people there.
It's going to be fun. We're
and
going to
it will be completely filled up. So we're unable to get Carrie back up on this Skype line, unfortunately. We're going to keep working on that during the breaks. As far as why we're not at the cafe today, we tried our the irony. Yeah. We tried doing that last weekend to do a remote. And we had problems getting Carrie on the Skype line.
Yeah, we did it through my iPhone, and it didn't work out too good. But I'm thinking Fridays just aren't our day. We're just going to have to do 2-hour shows 4 days a week.
I guess so. Yeah, the irony here, we can't get a hold of Carrie here from our studio line when that was the whole reason we came back to the studio for Friday. But, hey, we'll just keep on going with what we're doing. Also want to tell people about the Seattle Hemp Fest coming up next weekend, the 21st and 22nd in Seattle, Washington. This is the world's largest gathering of hemp protesters ever, right? This has been going on for 21 years, 22 years. I forget which year it is this year. But anyway.
Since 1990.
That 1990? I guess
it's about 20 years.
20 years, yeah. Okay. So with the Seattle Hemp Fest, what we're talking about is a 1.6 mile park, right? That's on the waterfront in Seattle, on the Sound. And this entire 1.6 mile park completely packed wall to wall with vendors and 6 different stages and all the tokers you could shake a stick at. Literally 200 to 300,000 people will come through Seattle Hemp Fest throughout the weekend. It's just an amazing event. And if you've never been there, I really encourage you to go because there's something transformative about being surrounded by such a mass of humanity who feels the same way you do about nature's most perfect herb.
And there's a slight little haze over that crowd. And it's very nice.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Around 4:20, at the 4:20 time, near all the stages, magical joints start flying through the crowd, and inevitably somebody brings some mega joint, some big old quarter-pound cubit.
It seems like every event that we go to, somebody's got an event where there's a lot of people. There's a QP sitting around there somewhere, and there's pictures. I had pictures on the Ganja John Facebook page of the QP we smoked out of, which was pretty crazy down at the Medical Cannabis Cup.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. The Seattle Hemp Fest, 6 different stages. I'll be speaking on the main stage and the Sealy stage, and I will put my schedule up on the NORML Cannabis Community Calendar, which you can find at norml.org/calendar. You can find out when and where I'm speaking. I'll also put on the speaking points or the speaking times for any of the other NORML people that are going to be there. I know that Kevin Oliver from Washington NORML is going to be speaking. Madeline Martinez from Oregon NORML will be speaking. And so if you want to keep track of what's happening where and when at Seattle Hemp Fest, you need to check out the NORML Cannabis Community Calendar. Also, I get the opportunity to jam a little bit. It's a lot of fun. Get to play music with Tim Pate, who's a local artist here in Portland, Oregon. Tim Pate, John Cornett, and my friend and cousin Kenny, he'll be playing drums with us. It's just an amazing event. We get to open up on the main stage on the Saturday and Sunday at noon on the main stage, and then we get to play on the Sealy stage at, I believe it's 6 p.m. on Saturday night. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. I think Carrie's computer must be down because every time I try to call her, there's no response here. So we're just going to have to wing it here as far as the news goes.
We could talk about an announcement that happened on John Doe Radio this last week about the Medical Cannabis Cup coming to Denver.
Yes, Medical Cannabis Cup, just the one that we did in San Francisco this last June, will be, I guess, in Colorado this year?
Yeah, they're still looking for a space, but, anybody in Colorado, you better get excited because that is a life-changing experience.
Yes, it is. All right, let me get to some of the news stories here. We're going to get here for you. First of all, just north of us in Washington State, we have a GOP Senate hopeful who's attacking marijuana pain research. You'd expect a politician to promote medical research being done at local universities, but Republican senatorial candidate Dino Rossi of Washington on Thursday tried to gain some traction in his political campaign by attacking a local research project which studies the use of marijuana cannabinoids to control pain. Rossi thought it would make an easy target after all. Talk about wasteful federal stimulus spending to rile up the Tea Party faithful and then drag in a tired old stoner stereotype for good measure. Quote, "This is one of those boondoggle projects that forces you to set aside the serious economic consequences of this so-called stimulus for a moment and just laugh at how out of touch Washington, D.C. really is," Rossi said. Washington state taxpayers are tired of their money going up in smoke. This bill isn't going to stimulate anything other than the sale of Cheetos, end quote. Okay, so once again, we have these Dino Rossi. By the way, Dino Rossi ran for governor in Washington State in the last gubernatorial election. It came down to a runoff between him and Christine Gregoire, and he complained and moaned all the way through about, improprieties in the vote, and he just couldn't accept the fact that he lost. Now he's running for Senate, and he wants to attack a legitimate study in a Washington university to study the use of cannabinoids for pain. Now, we have plenty of double-blind, placebo-controlled, peer-reviewed studies that show the effectiveness of cannabinoids in the treatment of neuropathic pain. This is to increase this understanding to how it might work on other types of pain. And we've got 60 to 80% of the United States understanding that marijuana is indeed a medicine and can help people with pain. But to Senate candidate Rossi, he just thinks we're all just a bunch of stoners eating Cheetos and the money's going up in smoke. There's no real good reason to be spending taxpayer monies to try to help them learn about keeping out of pain, to help people, right? That's a wasteful spending to Republican Rossi, apparently, to try to come up with some way of helping people. We're not going to stand for it. We're going to call him out every time. All right, there's a minister who's headed to trial who's facing 7 years for medical marijuana. Sad story coming out of Williamstown Township in Michigan. Undercover agents spent untold thousands of tax dollars and man hours monitoring Reverend Wayne Daggett and patrons of the Greenleaf Smokers Club in Williamstown Township, Michigan, as part of their surveillance of the medical marijuana collective. Now the minister is headed for trial on pot charges, facing up to 7 years in prison. Quote, he was set up from the beginning, Reverend Daggett's son Mike James told the website Toke of the Town. Quote, my dad didn't even have money for the alleged marijuana. He was so broke he couldn't even pay attention. They think that a man that moved into this town with his 15-year-old 6 months ago would suddenly have money and connections in Michigan for 100 pounds? There's more to this story, end quote. My father was doing everything by the book, Jones said. He was set up by some guy named Matt that was supposedly a friend of my dad's church, but he was an informant who did everything in his power to set his dad up. The full story can be read at tokeofthetown.com, and thank you, Steve Elliott, for bringing it to our attention. New poll gives California pot legalization initiative a 10-point lead. Support for Proposition 19, California's tax and regulate cannabis marijuana legalization initiative, is at 50% in the latest Survey USA poll, which was released Thursday. This figure is unchanged from last month's Survey USA poll. About 40% of respondents oppose Prop 19, which would allow Californians 21 or over to carry up to an ounce of pot and grow a 5x5 garden. The initiative would also give counties and cities the local option of permitting, taxing, and regulating marijuana sales and cultivation, reports Philip Smith at StopTheDrugWar.org. Other recent polls show similar levels of support for Prop 19. A Sacramento Bee field poll released last weekend showed support for a general marijuana legalization question at 51%. Interestingly, like other recent telephone polls, Thursday's Survey USA poll shows higher levels of support for legalization than the face-to-face polls. Voters could be reluctant to say they support a controversial idea like cannabis legalization in a face-to-face encounter, but may do so in much greater numbers in the privacy of the voting booth, Smith points out. Yeah, this is something we covered the other day in Nate Silver's analysis of the robo-polls versus the human polls. The robo-polls are showing double-digit leads for Prop 19, whereas the human polls are showing it about dead even or slightly behind. And again, this is something they call the Brodus effect, named after Snoop Dogg's real name, Calvin Brodus. The idea that people don't want to be assumed to be druggies when they're talking to a human being on the phone, but in the privacy of the voting booth, they'll make the sensible decision. I think that's a valid analysis.
See, Ganja John's jumping the gun.
Jumping the gun again. We got Cannabis Carrie back on the line, I believe. Carrie, are you there?
No.
Hello, Carrie? Oh, my goodness. We're going to have ourselves a Friday for today. That's Friday the 13th. must be the Friday the 13th. Gremlins are creeping in on us. I wonder if we can do anything about that. We will try during break to get Cannabis Carrie back on the line. Woo, we're having fun here at Normal Show Live. Hey, don't forget here, 2 o'clock we go into Toker Talk Radio live call-ins from you here at Normal Show Live. We'll be discussing California's Prop 19 and workplace drug testing. I want to talk to you about your experiences as a cannabis user in the workplace. Have you ever been fired for a drug test? Did you ever not get a job because because of a drug test? What have you done to get around a drug test? We'll talk about all of that at 2 o'clock Pacific time in about 40 minutes here in our Toker Talk Radio. The phone number is 971-533-7111. Don't call until after 2. And on Skype, it's Radical Russ. If you'd like to get involved in our chat on stickem.com, make sure to send us a friend request. We'll check them during the break, and we'll get you in on the chat.
Didn't jump the gun that time. That's
perfect. You're always right on time for 420 there.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how that works out, Ganja John. Maybe it has something to do with the name.
Maybe.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? Reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? Reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would say to South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
NORML Show Live will bring you exclusive live coverage of Seattle Hempfest on the third weekend of August. You'll probably remember more of it than those of us attending.
Today I was walking down the street, to my surprise, yeah.
5 of the last 7 people to run for president and the last 3 winners have all smoked pot. Marijuana, the gateway drug to the White House. It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today, we take you into the weekend with Rockin' Friday. Our segment features the best of rock, metal, punk, and jam band music. Brought to you by Eric Smokes Bud in Madison, Wisconsin. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
All right, everybody, welcome back. 22 after the hour. Keeping with our theme of Friday the 13th and things going wrong on NORML Show Live, we don't have Eric Smokesbud with us today, although we already knew that was going to be the fact. He sent us an email earlier. He's got something going on.
Yeah, his computer's not working.
Oh, everybody's computer's not working on Friday the 13th. I'm telling you, that's got to be what it is. Anyway, we're going to bring something back from the vaults that Eric brought for us before. This is a group called Skyhouse, and the song is Marijuana.
Marijuana, do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, you both, so baby, let's go. Touch 'em, you Nirvana, make sure, kinda wanna. Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, oh, tonight. You both, so baby, let's go. Every time she walks into a room, everybody's hearts go boom, boom, boom. Come a room for her eyes, just say. Once she gets into your head, she's gonna have a way. Moves mysterious like a puff of smoke. She mingles and she jiggles and she ain't no joke. Does a dance, put you in a trance, and you find yourself in a sweet romance with marijuana. Do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, you both, so baby, let's go. Touch 'em, pure Nirvana, make sure, kinda wanna. Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, oh, tonight. You blow, so baby, let's go. Moves mysterious through the air like a puff from smoking. If you get too close, feels like a heat stroke. Can't breathe, down on your knees. Marijuana, and you ain't too pleased. Like a fire, so you don't get tired. One touch of her lips, and you feel inspired. Love train, she gets inside your brain. Come a little closer, and you feel no pain. With marijuana, do you wanna? Mary, do you
mind you blow, so baby, let's go.
Sticky smell of a sweet perfume lingers in the air as she fills the room. Come here, rude boy, her smile will say, forget about tomorrow, let's fly away. Mary Jane, that is her name. Her love is crime that comes to feel no pain. Gets a party started, it goes on and on. Party all night till the break of dawn with marijuana. Do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight,
so baby, let's go.
touch ya, feel Nirvana. Makes ya kinda warmer. Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, oh oh, tonight, oh oh, tonight, oh oh, tonight.
You want a copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the Daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media and then Toker Tunes from the main menu.
It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. It's 4:20 somewhere.
All right, everyone, time to check out NORML's Cannabis Community Calendar, which you can find at normal.org/calendar. This weekend, the Midwest Reggae Fest is still taking place at Nelson Ledges Quarry Park. Ohio NORML will be vending at the Midwest Reggae Fest. Check out nlqp.com for more information. Tomorrow, Saturday, August 14th, Farm Fest 2010 continues. This is taking place in Johannesburg, Michigan. For information on that, check out farm-fest.com. Michigan NORML will have a booth at this festival. The Northern Michigan Compassion Club is meeting on Saturday at the Horizon Bookstore in Petoskey, Michigan. Check out minormal.org for details. And Oregon NORML's cardholder meeting will be held at the world-famous Cannabis Cafe, 322 Southeast 82nd Avenue in Portland, Oregon. It's a beautiful, beautiful cafe. We will be streaming live from the cafe, from the meeting, so that you can learn more about Oregon NORML. The meeting's open to all members of Oregon NORML who are medical marijuana card holders. You can join NORML at the door. For more information, check out ornorml.org. On Sunday, August 15th, the Schoolcraft County NORML Summerfest is taking place at Pines Park in Manistee, Michigan. Check out minormal.org for information. And the HempFest fundraiser at the Trouser Mouse Bar and Grill in Blue Springs, Missouri. Kansas City NORML will be there. Check out kcnormal.org or dial 888-KC-NORML. Next week, we've got plenty of events coming up. We'll tell you all about them next week. But of course, the most important event coming up next week is this coming weekend's Seattle Hemp Fest, August 21 and 22 at Myrtle Edwards Park in Seattle, Washington. 1.6 miles of park, 6 stages, lots and lots of bands, lots and lots of speakers. And in a special little note for those of you who are Seattle Hemp Fest veterans, or for those of you going to Seattle Hemp Fest for the first time for that matter, the city of Seattle has an initiative that passed that made marijuana the lowest law enforcement priority, which means when you go to Seattle Hemp Fest and you're hanging around with the 200,000 or so like-minded fellow tokers, there's not a whole lot of disincentive to not smoke marijuana. Well, that has gotten even better this year. The recently elected Seattle City Attorney has said that he will no longer prosecute most minor marijuana possession offenses, which means as it was already lowest enforcement priority for the cops. Now, if the cops even bring one of those charges to court, it won't be prosecuted by the city attorney. So it is going to be one hell of a good time at Seattle Hemp Fest this year. To get your exclusive backstage looks at Seattle Hemp Fest, as well as our show broadcasting from the NORML booth, just check out live.normal.org. Both days of Seattle Hemp Fest from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. We'll be there all day. For more information on NORML's Cannabis Community Calendar and all of these events, check out the web at normal.org/calendar.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 20s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stop arresting law-abiding citizens because they prefer marijuana over alcohol. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges. We're unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people each year simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They're average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Since 1970, NORML has been fighting for the rights of all adults who use cannabis responsibly. Since 1974, High Times magazine has been the chronicle of the cannabis community. Every second Friday of the month, we bring that working relationship to the NORML Daily Audio Stash with our special guest, Senior Editor Dave Bienenstock, author of the official High Times Pot Smokers Handbook, for our exclusive monthly preview of this month's issue of High Times.
You know, Russ, I said we were going to have some bumps, and this Dave Bienenstock not being here right now is partly my fault. Because when I saw you put the number, I thought, wait, Dave's on the West Coast. But I thought, no, I'm just high. I'm being silly. It's the same number.
Well, that's okay. We'll make it just fine. I think the Skype connection with Carrie is having some problems anyway, so it probably wouldn't have turned out the way we wanted. Yes, David Bienenstock, the senior editor of High Times Magazine, has now moved out to the West Coast. Yep. And he's now the West Coast editor and also working with that medical marijuana magazine that they have put together. So we're just going to go with the High Times preview that we've got right here. High Times Magazine just made it through the mail. This is the one with the big buds, Maximize Your Garden on the cover. All sorts of great stuff in this week's High Time, or this month's High Times. First of all, the top 20 pot colleges are listed in the magazine. That is a nice thing to see.
Sadly, I believe there's no Oregon colleges.
There's no Oregon colleges, which is a shock to me. Comedian Louis Black is also interviewed in the magazine this year. Louis Black, wonderful comedian. You see him on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart all the time.
Starting the TV show Root of All Evil.
Oh, really?
Yeah, great TV show.
Okay, so we'll get some more on that. This month's High Times Freedom Fighter, this is for the October issue. I wanted to bring this up because it couldn't be a more appropriate freedom fighter for the month leading into the election in California, and that's Richard Lee. Next month, Californians will vote to legalize marijuana, an historic opportunity they wouldn't have had made possible without the hard work of our freedom fighter of the month, Richard Lee. Best known as the founder of Oaksterdam University in Oakland, Lee is also the proprietor of Bulldog Coffee Shop, a nearby medical marijuana dispensary modeled after the coffee shops of Amsterdam, as well as the primary force behind the Regulate, Control, and Tax Cannabis Act of 2010. If approved by voters in November, the Tax Cannabis Act would legalize the personal possession of up to 1 ounce of cannabis for all adults of drinking age. Californians aged 21 and over would also have the right to cultivate a 25-square-foot marijuana garden, while local governments would retain the option of regulating commercial production and sales. The act would also keep Proposition 215 intact so that medical marijuana patients would lose none of their current rights. A medical marijuana patient himself, Lee moved to California after suffering a spinal cord injury 2 decades ago that put him in a wheelchair. But rather than rest content with securing his own medical marijuana rights, Lee has been tirelessly fighting for the full legalization since 1992, including putting millions of dollars into the campaign to get the Tax Cannabis Act on the ballot. Since then, he's given countless interviews in support of the act, offering the public a genuine portrait of a successful and generous cannabis consumer. Thanks, Richard. And also, with regard to the Prop 19 here coming through in California, for a long time I've had a problem. I shouldn't say a problem, but I've worried about the situation in California with dispensaries. And my worry was that enough people would get dispensaries and enough people would get their rights under Prop 215 that nobody would want to put the effort in to legalize. And I'd been saying this since, about 2000 or so. And the reason I'd been saying it is because, for the longest time, those of us who are interested in legalizing marijuana have been told that we need to get in the back of the bus, right? That the patients have to come first. And we completely agreed with that. The patients need to be in the front of the line. But, we've been waiting at the back here for about 14 years. And my theory was that these dispensaries would become so enamored of the money that they're making and the situation they've got that they would fight to preserve the status quo. And it is something we've seen. We have seen dispensaries, Patient-to-Patient Collective in South Lake Tahoe, the Unity Collective in Sacramento, and some others who are openly opposing legalization for the rest of us. They don't mind taking money from marijuana, but they're going to use that money to oppose legalization for the rest of us. Kudos to Richard Lee for proving me wrong. I am so glad he proved me wrong on this, that somebody who owns a dispensary would have something other than their own bottom line and personal interests in mind, and would put their money where their mouth is and go for full legalization for all of us. I would encourage all other dispensary owners to do the same. Of course, this month's High Times has all the greatest pot pictures in here, and I'm going to get to the top 20 pot colleges, which is kind of an interesting thing. I think this was derived more from their activism than their partying.
Right. SSDP just sent out a most active colleges in activism too.
Yeah, and I think that's what this
kind of derived from, I believe.
Yeah, I think this is what it's coming from. The most active. It's called the top 20 institutions of higher learning, and it's a team up here between High Times Magazine and the Students for Sensible Drug Policy. A great organization. I encourage you to check them out at ssdp.org. Coming in at number 5 on the top 20 institutions of higher learning, the University of Iowa in Iowa City, Iowa. The University of Iowa SSDP had an outstandingly successful first year, hosting speakers from LEAP, Iowa Patients for Medical Marijuana, and local attorneys for a wildly successful Know Your Rights event. University of Iowa SSDP members have also testified at the Iowa Board of Pharmacy hearings on medical marijuana, as well as lobbied university administrators who subsequently announced a Good Samaritan policy starting next year. Note about that, the Good Samaritan policy, this is really important for college students to understand. The Good Samaritan policy is an idea that says, if someone in your frat house or your dorm room or your party is overdosing, you can call the cops, you can call the campus cops, and you yourself won't get busted for the fact that there were, drugs going on, drug taking going on at your dorm or your fraternity. Because what happens, unfortunately, in a lot of these situations is college kids are experimenting with drugs, somebody takes it too far and overdoses, and the kids don't want to call the cops. They don't want to call the ambulance because they know it'll cost them their scholarship, their dorm housing, and so on. So they take chances. They try folk remedies to try to wake up the person who's having their overdose, making them puke or whatever, not knowing a damn thing what they're doing, and possibly causing even more harm for the person who overdoses. So kudos to SSDP for pushing that in Iowa City at the University of Iowa, the Good Samaritan policy, so college students can call the health authorities without fear of repercussion for their drug use. Now, the number 4 coming in on the top 20 institutions of higher learning, Northern Virginia Community College in Annandale, Virginia. By the way, Annandale referenced in the Steely Dan song.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. All right. Annandale, Virginia. Founding and building a successful SSDP chapter can be quite difficult of commuter schools and those with non-traditional campuses. But the Northern Virginia Community College SSDP makes it look like a piece of cake. Students from NVCC have directly lobbied their state representatives on marijuana law reform legislation, building support for the movement in the state. Founder and former President Jason Matthews was given SSDP's Most Outstanding Activist Award at our national conference this March in San Francisco for his dedication and hard work. Great work in Northern Virginia there in Annandale. The number 3 institution of higher learning, according to High Times and the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, Kent State University in Ohio, another university mentioned in a rock song.
In a rock song,
Of course, 4 dead in Ohio, the shooting at Kent State in 1970. In the past year, the Kent State SSDP have worked with university administrators to pass a Good Samaritan policy, again, we mentioned that, and hosted several successful campus events, including a monthly public education session called Let's Talk About Drugs. The chapter also publishes a blog, letstalkaboutdrugs.blogspot.com, hosted a statewide strategy summit, and tirelessly continues to provide support for Ohio's medical marijuana legislation through both campus and community free outreach efforts. Good news for the folks in Kent State, Kent, Ohio. Kent State University, number 3 on the top 20 institutions of higher learning. Number 2 on our top 20 institutions, the University of Utah, Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City?
That's wonderful. I love hearing that. After receiving the 2010 Outstanding Chapter Award, the University of Utah SSDP continues to be a shining example for activism both in and outside the realm of drug policy reform, including hosting their own weekly campus radio show, Drug War Radio, in which they discuss national and local news in drug policy, as well as the campaigns they're working on. You can look them up at ssdputah.org. And number 1 in the High Times Magazine Students for Sensible Drug Policy 2010 Top 20 Institutions for Higher Learning, Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Congratulations, Ithaca, upstate New York. On the campus level, the Ithaca College SSDP worked to get a medical amnesty policy for alcohol and other drugs signed by their college president. SSDPers at Ithaca have been doing everything they can to advance statewide medical marijuana legislation in New York. Evan Nissen, president of the chapter, is one of the founders of New York Patients First, a coalition of patient advocates who have been able to raise support for safe, legal access to medical cannabis. Check them out at ssdp.org/Facebook/Ithaca. And there you go. If you want to know the other 15 listed in the top 20 institutions of higher learning, you'll just have to check out the October 2010 issue of High Times Magazine.
I want to give another shout out to SSDP because, if you're in college, you can start a college NORML chapter. But if you're in high school, you can't do that. SSDP allows you to do that if you are in high school. So
that's right.
Any of you guys that shouldn't be listening to our show right now that are in high school, you can start an SSDP chapter at your school.
Right. And the reason behind that, too, has to do with, what we're really about. If you take the name Students for Sensible Drug Policy, they're about drug policy.
Right.
We're NORML, National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, which also means reforming drug policy, of course, but we're bigger than that. We're about marijuana. I like to say that some of the other orgs are against prohibition. We are for marijuana. And since we are for marijuana, we don't open up chapters at the high school level because we don't believe people under the age of 18 should be using marijuana.
They shouldn't be.
Unless it's for medical purposes.
Right.
All right, so let's check this out. Some more stuff coming up here in the upcoming issue of High Times Magazine. Encourage everyone to check out. There's a great article in here with head neck rocker Commander Cody. Those of our older tokers out there will know Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen. A great interview here with Michael Simmons. I love the quote, though, from the interview here when they're talking to Commander Cody. They ask him, "When were you busted?" And he says, "Which time?" And so they say, "Oh, okay, well, how many times have you been busted?" "For what?" So, great interview with Commander Cody. Check that out. Still High talks with Matt Pike. Matt Pike who worked with the stoner doom metal pioneers Sleep. Great interview with him, another musician. And probably the best part of the magazine, if you ask me, Snoop Dogg is in the house in High Times Magazine with step-by-step instructions on how to roll a blunt.
I think that they should have a poster.
I know. This needs to be blown up poster size. Yeah. Snoop Dogg, it's called Bluntology 101. Snoop Dogg shows you how to rap da bizzud.
A buddy of mine from the chat has told us a story about smoking with Snoop Dogg.
Oh, yeah.
And he had some weed that he wanted to smoke with Snoop Dogg, and Snoop Dogg said, "Hold on, let me smoke mine first." And he pulled a blunt out, smoked it to himself, and goes, "Okay, let's smoke yours now."
Very nice. Another great article in High Times. You definitely should check this one out. It's High Times is addressing this new Spice K2 synthetic cannabinoids here. New drugs to demonize. What are K2 and Spice, and why is the government mounting a campaign to stamp them out? So interesting information here from High Times on K2 Spice. Check out the magazine High Times. It's also available as an online edition, hightimes.com. Of course, big purple bud on the cover, a little bit of Snoop Dogg in the top right corner. This is the October 2010 issue. Should be available on newsstands and coming through the mail very soon. Make sure you get a copy of that. When we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit of reefer madness from the California Chamber of Commerce concerning California's Prop 19. It's NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation. We'll be right back after this.
Ever wonder how often to change your bong water? The most effective method for making pot brownies? The best destinations for a ganja getaway? How to hide herb in your car? Whether to grow your own how precisely to legalize it, or how something as wonderful as marijuana ever got to be illegal in the first place. Finally, you can find all these answers and much more in the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook, featuring 420 things to do when you're stoned. Since 1974, High Times magazine has covered marijuana in all its aspects and wonders, from cultivation to legalization to the herb's enduring and exalted place in popular culture. Packed with inside information, the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook rolls all of this collected wisdom together into a single indispensable ganja guide, including an entertaining look at marijuana's history, profiles of herb-friendly travel destinations and festivals, favorite potluck recipes from the High Times staff, smoking skills, advocacy and activism, essential marijuana movies and songs, profiles of famous cannabis strains, comprehensive growing information, celebrity endorsements, and much more. This is truly, finally, the ultimate guide to green living.
Marijuana is an addictive drug, which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death. Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind.
If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster of marijuana, he would drop dead from fright.
Welcome back, everyone. 45 after the hour. It is time to once again address California's Prop 19. For the longest time, I've been ranting against the tossed salad, the Stoners Against Legalization article a day. This time, we get to rant against the actual opponents, the real opponents we should be ranting against, and that is the people in business and law enforcement and the so-called moral majority that are against California's Prop 19. In my crosshairs today is the California Chamber of Commerce, and this came to my attention through an email blast and a web posting from another one of these anti-websites, noonproposition19.com. And to tell you the truth, I was quite flattered because they actually quoted me. They quoted me by saying that the Prop 19 is going to make it so businesses can never drug test and it'll be awful. There'll be druggies in the workplace, and NORML agrees. And they point out my part of my article where I write how this is going to kneecap drug testing, which it will. So let's talk a little bit about that, because the California Chamber of Commerce has released a new press release that thinks that Prop 19 means the attack of the stone drivers. The legal interpretation has been released, and it literally warns,
imagine a workplace where employees show up to work high on marijuana and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what employers could look forward to if Prop 19 passes.
Well, terrifying. That sounds almost as terrifying as people showing up to work using their OxyContin, Vicodin, Percocet, or Darvocet prescriptions, doesn't it?
Completely undetectable.
Yeah. Never mind the fact that right there in Prop 19 it says, quote, the existing right of an employer to address consumption that actually impairs job performance by an employee shall not be affected. So how do they come up with this scaremongering? What are they using to support this? I mean, the way that you can debunk this right away, if anyone says, oh my God, are there going to be stoned workers in the workplace, is to point this out. California is an at-will employment state, meaning the employer can fire the employee at will for any reason. Now, if you're worried about your employees being impaired by marijuana, the answer, of course, is to test for impairment, actual impairment. See, the whole basis for all this workplace drug testing is the idea that somebody could be high on the job and that would impair their performance to the point of causing a workplace safety issue. But the problem is, all sorts of things impair an employee, like drowsiness from prescription drugs, fatigue from overwork, distraction due to injury pain, and lack of sleep. Drug testing doesn't catch any of those impairments, and most often it catches employees who have used cannabis away from work days or weeks before when it couldn't possibly impair workplace performance. Now, the California Chamber continues the scaremongering.
Effect of Proposition 19. Because the current anti-smoking law only applies to tobacco products, the prohibition would not prohibit employees from smoking marijuana in the workplace. In fact, employers would be required to allow marijuana smoking at work because Proposition 19 would prohibit denial of any right or privilege granted by the Act without defining what that means.
Yeah, except for the fact that smoking tobacco in the workplace is not a consumption that actually impairs job performance.
Effective Proposition 19. Employers could not meet the requirements of the Drug-Free Workplace Act because the proposition prohibits them from denying any right or privilege or discriminating against anyone for marijuana use. Statewide, affected employers could lose millions of dollars in federal funding.
Remember how the federal government pulled all those millions of dollars of federal funding when California passed Proposition 215? I mean, you must remember, right? Because the California Chamber of Commerce and other opponents were predicting in 1996 the same exact thing, that California voting for medical marijuana would cause the state to lose federal contracts. Oh, right. That never happened. 14 years of medical marijuana, billions in bought and sold medicine in dispensaries, dozens of DEA raids later, and yet not one contract, grant, or bit of funding has been pulled by the federal government to the state of California.
Employers would be prohibited from discriminating against marijuana users by taking marijuana use into account when deciding whether to hire an applicant.
Wow, they're not even coy about their intent. They specifically want to discriminate against you. It has nothing to do with fears of impaired workers or lost federal contracts. It's that they believe your marijuana use makes you a bad person, deserving of unemployment and homelessness.
Proposition 19 would allow marijuana users to claim that an employer's actions are motivated by marijuana use. Just as with the Federal Employment Health Act, employers would be required to prove the employee's poor performance and not marijuana use justifying the personnel action.
They would have to prove that when you fire someone for poor performance, that you fired them for poor performance and not just marijuana use. You're saying this is a problem? Let's say you've got a bad employee. You fire said employee. Employee claims you're discriminating against him because he smokes pot. You show proof that the employees had bad performance. And the problem is what? You can't just fire people for being pot smokers? There's a whole lot in the California Chamber of Commerce's screed about actual impairment that completely defies logic. An employer could not take any disciplinary action against an employee, even if allowed to test, until the marijuana use, quote, actually impaired, end quote, the employee's performance. For example, causing a workplace accident. Or at least, maybe they just have a problem with understanding verb tense. Prop 19 doesn't say the employer can only discipline users who are actually impaired. It says it can discipline consumption that actually impairs. If wrecking the forklift is the only way you can determine whether someone's impaired, your workplace has bigger safety problems than people who might have smoked pot the night before.
Because an employer would only be permitted to act if an employee's marijuana use actually impairs job performance, and employees' hands would be tied to take any action based on the perception that an employee's marijuana use is a potential threat in the workplace.
Right! You can't just discriminate against people based on your perceptions. Whether you falsely perceive that blacks can't be trusted, whether you falsely perceive that Jews are going to hell, whether you falsely perceive disabled people are a pain to accommodate, or whether you falsely perceive cannabis consumers are a constant workplace threat. If your employee shows up reeking of pot with his eyes all bloodshot and you suspect pot use that is actually impairing him, you just have to prove it, that's all. There are loads of peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies that opponents of cannabis, like you, constantly cite to us to back up the need to workplace analysis. You tell us we have to P-test because these studies show recent cannabis use impairs people. So, how do these studies fail to demonstrate that recent use of marijuana is a potential threat and that it actually impairs? You can't have it both ways. You can't use the studies to say recent marijuana use impairs, so we have to P-test. But then when we get rid of P-testing, you can't say there's no way to show the use of marijuana impairs. You just showed us the damn studies. Use those studies to show that the guy who's recently smoked pot on your job is impaired, and you won't have any problems whatsoever.
Although Proposition 19 specifically shall not be construed to affect, limit, or amend any statute that forbids impairment while engaging in dangerous activities such as driving, the proposition does not address conduct before driving. According to Proposition 19, unless an employee is actually impaired, the employer cannot do anything to prevent marijuana use before an employee drives.
Well, see the paragraphs above that I wrote up on stash.normal.org. Again, if you can show they're impaired, they're not going to be allowed to drive. That's the whole point. We're asking you to show impairment, not discriminate simply because someone is a cannabis consumer. But there's even more about this. If your blazed employee is about to take out the company car, test him for impairment. There's tests for that will catch not only the stoned driver, but the guy who had a beer at lunch, the guy who's on antihistamines that make him drowsy, the guy distracted by his wife's affair and pending divorce, the guy who stayed up all night last night playing World of Warcraft, and so on. But you see, that's the problem. Testing for actual impairment would catch many of the people businesses are currently allowing to operate forklifts and drive company cars and trucks. It would show people once and for all that P-testing hasn't done anything to make us safer. It would embarrass the companies that use drug testing when their most impaired employees are never caught by it. It also might catch the boss after a 2-martini lunch. So don't believe the lies from the California Chamber of Commerce. They represent the businesses that are significantly invested in both time and reputation in using drug tests to discriminate against cannabis consumers, to break their union protections, and to fire good people for no reason. They're just terrified that their urinary tool of oppression is about to go the way of the No Irish Need Apply sign into the dustbin of history. So that's the California Chamber of Commerce. You can read more about that from the blog No on Proposition19.com, which, John, they're not accepting comments over there.
No, they are not.
No, we tried. I was going to put a comment up there and just tear them apart. But they know better because they know if we're talking about it, we're winning. That's right. Oh, man. The scare tactics are just amazing. And this is something I want to talk about coming up into our second hour. At 2 o'clock, we go into Toker Talk Radio, where we start taking your calls at 971-533-7111. And let's talk about California's Prop 19. And those of you in California, give me a call because I'd like to know, what are you hearing out there? What's going on in California on the ground? What are the things you're hearing from people? What's the buzz on the streets, so to speak? Pardon the pun.
I'm going to come back Monday. Is my mic's on? I'm going to come back Monday. I'm going to a family reunion this weekend with a lot of conservative Christians.
Oh, good.
And a lot of Californian conservative Christians. So I'll come back with a report and see what they say. My mom told me not to tell them what I do. So I'm going to wear my ganja eye patch. I'm going to wear my high time shirt.
And not say what you do.
And not say what I do. I may do it, but I won't say
We'll talk about it, yeah. Yeah, Ganja Mom must love you.
She does. Ganja Mom does love me. She has to admit it. She does.
All right, let's bring Carrie back on the line for just a second as we say goodbye here. See if we still have Carrie on the line. Are you there?
Yes, I was listening intently. Good job, Russ. Those guys really need to have you stick it to them.
That's right. How many of us, I know myself, before I even came into this job, I worked for, 50% of what I could make in most businesses, but I couldn't get hired at most businesses because of the drug testing. It's just a shame that so many of us are forced into underemployment and unemployment because of this, psychopharmacology. I can't even say the word today. It's Friday the 13th. Damn it. I can't say anything.
There's been times when friends ask me, oh, does this place drug test? I can't go there then to look for a job.
Yeah. Oh, I can't go there.
Yeah.
Or better yet.
Underemployment.
Or better yet, I won't go there.
Yeah, I won't do it.
Yeah. All right, folks, coming up into our second hour here of Toker Talk Radio. Give us a few minutes here. About 10 after, we'll start taking your calls. We've got to upload the podcast. Until then, Ganja John will talk to you and give you some music to listen to. We'll be back next week with more news, talk, interviews, information, music, comedy, and more by, for, and about the cannabis community. Check us out tomorrow, live.normal.org, 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific time for coverage of the Oregon NORML world-famous Cannabis Cafe cardholders meeting. And next weekend at Seattle Hemp Fest all weekend long. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
We love
of the earth.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it out one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.